two longtime Fox News contributors have quit in protest over Tucker Carlson trying to rewrite history in his so-called documentary on the January 6th insurrection. Steve Hayes and Jonah Goldberg write, quote, "The special is presented in the style of an expose, a hard-hitting piece of investigative journalism. In reality, it is a collection of incoherent conspiracy mongering, riddled with factual inaccuracy, half-truths, deceptive imagery, and damning omissions. The release of Patriot Purge," that's the name of the special, "wasn't an isolated incident. It was merely the most egregious example of a long-standing trend. With the release of Patriot Purge, we felt we could no longer do right as we see it and remain at Fox News."
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Jackson White, co-founder and chief of content at Politiscope, and thank you for tuning in again today and joining us at TYT. Now, Steve Hayes and Jonah Goldberg, two longtime participants in Fox News, quit recently, as we just saw, because of the new segment coming out, Patriot Purge. Now, in this next clip that we look at, we're going to see a little bit of how Tucker Carlson is bringing that to light to the public. But it's going to be really important for us to touch on the fact that Fox News has been spreading misinformation, has been poisoning the mind of the public, specifically the right wing and loyal voters to the Republican Party, and pushing the country ever further to the right ever since it was founded. That's literally why it was founded, to be a propaganda outlet for the Republican Party. And over time, we're all old enough to have seen how things have just continued to push further and further and further to the right. So let's take a look at this next clip about how Tucker Carlson is bringing this to the public.
So FBI operatives were organizing the attack on the Capitol on January 6th, according to government documents. And those two are not alone. In all, Revolver News reported that there are, quote, upwards of 20 unindicted co-conspirators in the Oath Keeper indictments, all playing various roles in the conspiracy, who have not been charged for virtually the exact same activities, and in some cases, much, much more severe activities, as those named alongside them in the indictments. Huh? So it turns out that this white supremacist insurrection was, again, by the government's own admission in these documents, organized at least in part by government agents.
Now, if you ask me, and I'm sure that this isn't very difficult to agree with, Patriot Purge is nothing new. Fox News has been doing this for years and years, my entire life, okay? I'm going to be 30 in a couple of months. I turned 30 in January. And ever since I could ever think about Fox News, all they've done is spread lies, misinformation. And, you know, before I really got deep into politics, even back then, like I always noticed, like, oh, that's that crazy racist. They always be having those crazy old white people on there talking that, you know what I'm saying? And that's how people view it who aren't even in politics, because we know who consumes it mostly. You know, older, right-wing, loyal Republican voters who come from an era where racism and segregation was the thing. You know what I'm saying? That was the thing. And the further time goes along in their view, more and more of what they view as rightfully theirs is being taken from them. And Patriot Purge is no different.
From his ban on drilling on federal land to ending the Keystone Pipeline project, his first day in office, President Biden has fulfilled his campaign promise to declare war on the oil industry.
So Joe Biden has put in place some mild reforms in order to shift the United States more towards renewable energy. And Fox News is very predictably freaking out about it. But of course they're freaking out about it in a very dishonest way.
And now that's impacting you, not just at the gas pump, but home heating prices are projected to rise by as much as 50% this winter. Joining me now, Lynn Allen, who was laid off when President Biden killed the Keystone XL pipeline project. Good morning to you, Lynn.
So oil and gas prices are high right now, and there's a lot of reasons for it. But the long story short is that it mostly has to do with the fact that when we shut down a lot of things in the economy, demand slowed down for things like oil and gas. When demand slowed down for things like oil and gas, they rolled back a lot of the infrastructure that was used to deliver that. Now, as demand is increasing, they're having a very difficult time rolling up that infrastructure again. This is leading to a huge increase in the cost of natural gas and petroleum. But Fox News here is committed to saying that it's all because the Keystone XL pipeline is shut down, which is fundamentally dishonest. Because realistically, despite the fact that Joe Biden did do something good, which is stopping the Keystone XL pipeline, Joe Biden didn't stop the Line 3 pipeline. a pipeline which bulldozed its way through indigenous land and was being protested literally last week. In fact, police officers literally used an LRAD against the protesters who were simply trying to speak up for the rights of indigenous folks. Among the protesters were indigenous elders, and the device they use, which is called an LRAD, is used to make an incredibly loud sound. Its intended purpose is to send signals over long distances, and if it's used near people, it can cause hearing damage. But police officers were using it on an innocent crowd of protesters in order to try and get them to disperse. So we need to set the record straight that Joe Biden is not sufficiently against oil pipelines.
The thing about it is, we got all these high prices of oil and gas. Whenever we got drilling rigs stacked, we've got roustabout crews ready to go. We've got pipeline contractors with all of their equipment is stacked in the yards. And I can tell you right now, we can put America to work next week if we needed to.
This guy seems to think that we can ramp up fossil fuel infrastructure overnight, when the truth is, we really can't. And the central problem right now are these bottlenecks in the supply chain. So no, even if Joe Biden really wanted to ramp up fossil fuel infrastructure tomorrow, he wouldn't be able to because these supply line problems are more systemic. It turns out that our capitalist system of organizing labor around the world based on the minimum bidder with no emergency plan whatsoever or redundancy in terms of delivering critical components to necessary infrastructure is actually a bad way of organizing a society.
Morning, young lady.
Okay, so the high cost of oil and gas, the rising prices there appear to have taken the Biden administration by surprise. Are you surprised by this?
No, ma'am, I'm not surprised at all. Because everything that Biden's touched or done, it's a failure. It ain't nothing but a total failure. We went from America first to America last. And our America last was Trump had it going on.
But let's really talk about these high prices, because I think it's important to understand the larger context. In my opinion, it's a good thing that gas prices are high, because people shouldn't be using fossil fuels. We should be rapidly shifting away from our fossil fuel dependent economy. Now you could say, Ben, but what about the workers that need to get to work? People need to fill up their cars, right? Well, no. The response that a normal government would have to a situation like this would be to rapidly expand public transit and heavily subsidize things like buses and trains in order to make sure that people have cheaper options to get to work without being dependent on individual consumption of fossil fuel. As for the natural gas prices, it's good that those are high too, because people really should be shifting to electric. For the people that are currently heating their homes off of natural gas, there should be specific subsidies that go to heating people's homes because that is necessary, especially in places like where I live in Minneapolis. You can't really survive the winter without heat in the building here. So you subsidize that specific use of natural gas to make sure that individuals are not being punished for the collective failure of the United States to respond to climate change. But we should let the price of natural gas increase because that would incentivize a transition to clean energy. The cheaper solar and wind are on a relative scale to things like coal and natural gas, the more rapidly they will be adopted.